How many more years you think LeBron's gonna play?
I hope he retires soon.
The idea of going back home to retire as a Cavs makes perfect sense. This is year 23. This is more of his legacy than it is what...
Bronny James, he's 7 for 28 in 4 preseason games from the field. He's 2 for 13, I believe, from three-point range. He's got 8 assists and 8 turnovers. He's moving into year 2. This guy is not an NBA player.
James is not very good at basketball. Like, can we be honest here? Can we be completely honest?
And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
The rise of the James family in professional basketball represents a fundamental shift in how NBA careers are built and protected. LeBron James isn't just a player with an agent anymore. He's built an entire business machine around himself. Clutch Sports handles representation, the SpringHill company shapes the narrative, Nike anchors the brand. Together, they form a self-contained ecosystem with real economic power. And that system hasn't just supported LeBron, it's now actively engineering the careers of his sons, Bronny and Bryce.
How do you feel about the way Bronny James played?
So, you know, it's unfair that he is there, is what I'm going to say. You know, I think it's clear, like, the reason why he's there is because LeBron, you know, has kind of made sure he's there. He's just not an NBA player. He looks, in my mind, like almost like worse than he was last year, or it hasn't been any improvement.
Bronny James's entry into the NBA and Bryce James's commitment to the University of Arizona aren't just athletic milestones. They're the results of a coordinated strategy designed to protect the James legacy from risk, randomness, and failure. By exploiting the modern CBA, NIL rules, and unmatched agency leverage, the James ecosystem hasn't just adapted to the system, it's learned how to control it. The draft, once a proving ground, has become a managed investment. The James ecosystem has effectively hacked the draft process. The next generation of James isn't being discovered by the market, they're being positioned inside it, turning professional progression into a controlled asset class.
Rob and I did not give Bronny anything. Bronny has earned this, right? Bronny talks about his hard work. Bronny has earned this.
To understand how Bronny and Bryce James came to occupy such advantageous positions, you first need to consider the foundation LeBron James has meticulously built over 2 decades. It's not just a career, it's a system, one that gives his family control over nearly every aspect of the modern athlete experience: representation, storytelling, and monetization. LeBron James is the first active NBA player to achieve billionaire status, a feat accomplished not solely through on-court earnings, but through a diversified portfolio that functions as a family office. This portfolio includes significant stakes in Fenway Sports Group, Blaze Pizza, and Beats by Dre. However, the core engines shaping his sons' careers are the SpringHill Company and Clutch Sports Group. Clutch controls access to teams, contracts, and influence. SpringHill controls the story. Valued at roughly $725 million, SpringHill isn't just a production company, it's a narrative engine. It blends entertainment, athlete advocacy, and brand strategy into a single platform that allows the James family to speak directly to the public without relying on traditional media filters. When a moment needs context, Bronny's medical emergency, Bryce's development arc, the pressure of legacy, that story doesn't wait for outsiders to define it. It's framed in-house through SpringHill projects like The Shop or Top Class. The result? Perception management at scale. This control ensures that the public perception of Bronny and Bryce is curated by their father, insulating them from the objective critique that typically accompanies prospects with their statistical profiles. The James sons are rarely discussed as ordinary prospects navigating uncertainty. Instead, they're presented as chapters in a carefully guided legacy.
It's potentially miscalculated because his greed, his desire to play with his son may end up blowing up in his face. This has turned into a tragic soap opera moment.
Bronny and Bryce were brought into that system early. Both signed NIL deals with Nike while still in high school, placing them inside the brand's marketing ecosystem long before they ever stepped onto a professional court. By the time their basketball careers began to matter publicly, their commercial value was already locked in. LeBron's lifelong brand loyalty, his son's grassroots teams, and their college affiliations now sit inside the same corporate orbit. The result? Continuity. The James name stays visible, marketable, and protected even when performance doesn't justify the spotlight. In this system, basketball is no longer the sole driver of relevance. The brand carries the momentum. Bronny James being drafted and signed by the Lakers is a perfect example of how the James family's influence can open doors that normally stay closed, can reshape traditional pathways. The James name can outweigh the usual standards used to determine who earns a spot in the league, the traditional meritocratic barriers. The disparity between Bronny's production and his professional outcome drew sharp criticism, with many labeling the selection an egregious abuse of power that undermined the integrity of the league and took a roster spot from a more deserving player. This strategy required the complicity of the Lakers, who were simultaneously negotiating a contract extension with LeBron James. At the time of the draft, LeBron had declined his player option, technically making him a free agent during the draft process. This created an implicit threat. If the Lakers did not draft Bronny, LeBron could walk away or demand a trade. The Lakers' selection of Bronny at pick 55 became part of the broader negotiation, essentially a condition of LeBron's continued tenure, a transaction confirmed when LeBron signed a 2-year, $104 million extension shortly after the draft. The clearest evidence of the James engine in action is Bronny's rookie contract. Late second-round picks typically receive non-guaranteed Exhibit 10 deals or two-way contracts that split time between the NBA and the G League. Bronny James, by contrast, secured a fully guaranteed standard NBA contract, an outcome that sharply departed from league norms. Isaiah Wong, the 55th pick just a year prior, was the ACC Player of the Year and received a two-way contract. Bronny James, who started only 6 games in college, received $4 million in guaranteed money.
About if he's waiting around for Bryce, and there was like about a minute, 90-second meandering response that he had, and it wasn't a denial. You know, he was kind of making jokes. He said, I don't know if we're on the same time frame or not, but it was certainly not a strong denial that that wasn't ultimately in the back of his head, and that is something that he is planning towards, is trying to play with both of his kids on one team.
While Bronny's path into the league relied on force and leverage, the approach for the younger son, Bryce James, appears far more calculated. His commitment to the University of Arizona reflects a strategy built on patience, brand alignment, and long-term positioning, revealing a sophisticated understanding of the collegiate landscape. Bryce's decision to attend Arizona was shaped less by basketball fit alone and more by corporate alignment between the university and the James family's business partners. Bryce plays for the Strive for Greatness AAU team on the Nike EYBL circuit. The pipeline from a Nike-sponsored AAU team to a Nike-sponsored university is standard industry practice, but the James connection supercharges this relationship. Bryce James' recruitment was driven as much by the collateral benefits of his presence as by his on-court talent. At number 257 nationally, his profile typically would not warrant a scholarship from a top-tier program like Arizona. Yet evaluators openly acknowledge the real incentive. LeBron James in the stands attending games is worth a scholarship slot on its own. For the University of Arizona, Bryce functions as a strategic asset. The cost of a scholarship is negligible compared to the media exposure generated by LeBron James courtside at McHale Center. This LeBron bump aids in recruiting other elite players, selling tickets, and elevating the program's national profile. The James family understands this leverage and utilized it to secure a placement at a top developmental program despite Bryce's 3-star ranking. Perhaps the most critical insight from the Bryce James saga is the strategic pivot toward patience. Unlike Bronny, who was thrust into the spotlight immediately at USC, Bryce is expected to redshirt his freshman year. Arizona head coach Tommy Lloyd, known for his developmental track record at Gonzaga, where he recruited international stars like Rui Hachimura, has publicly discussed the possibility of redshirting Bryce to protect his career and preserve eligibility. This strategy acknowledges the mistake made with Bronny. Bronny's draft stock plummeted because he played before he was physically or skillfully ready. By redshirting Bryce, the James camp and Coach Lloyd can hide the tape. Bryce can develop his body, currently 6'6" and 160 pounds, in an elite college system without the pressure of game performance. This allows the James brand mystique to remain intact, projecting potential rather than exposing reality. It's a quiet but important lesson learned from Bronny's experience.
Bronny wanted to get drafted by any NBA team. He wanted to hear his name. It was LeBron that wanted him as his.
The James dynasty has effectively separated money from performance. Through NIL deals and brand valuation, Bronny and Bryce earn millions based largely on their last name, creating a financial cushion that lets them take risks most prospects simply cannot afford. Even as a late second-round pick, Bronny entered the NBA with a net worth that surpassed the career earnings of many veteran role players. Deals with Nike, Beats by Dre, and PSD underwear meant he never needed an NBA paycheck to survive. That financial freedom made Rich Paul's Australia option a real threat. For most players drafted 55th, the NBA is the only lifeline. For Bronny, it was just one option. Bryce James is currently the only high school player outside the top 50 recruits with a valuation over $1 million. That number is driven almost entirely by his last name and social media reach, not his on-court production, where he averaged just 6.9 points per game on the EYBL circuit. Even if Bryce never becomes a starter at Arizona, he remains a profitable brand.
You said you with my son. No, I wasn't. I was talking about you. It wasn't about your son. I know he's number 55. I know he got work to do. Yeah. I believe that he got the potential. And by the way, I'm rooting for him. I ain't rooting against nobody. But I'm talking about your You.
When accusations of nepotism around Bronny's draft selection intensified, LeBron addressed them on his own platform. Instead of answering to journalists in a press setting, he spoke in a familiar barbershop environment surrounded by friends and business partners. The conversation focused on fatherhood, legacy, and empowerment, not on statistics or roster logic. Bronny was framed as a hard-working kid unfazed by critics, shifting the story from a basketball debate into an emotional family narrative. This framing is powerful. Criticism no longer targets a questionable draft decision. It risks sounding like an attack on a father supporting his son. Netflix's Starting Five reinforces the same storyline, highlighting LeBron's longevity and tying his motivation directly to the dream of playing alongside Bronny, further cementing the legacy narrative in popular culture. The evidence is clear. LeBron James's off-court empire is the financial and structural engine behind his sons' careers. The James family is no longer just a basketball lineage, it operates as a fully integrated business system that has effectively streamlined a private pathway to the NBA. The James model introduces a new version of the modern athlete, the influencer prospect. It proves that with enough capital, leverage, and narrative control, the traditional meritocracy of sports can be reshaped. The family has shifted success from something earned strictly on the court to something engineered behind the scenes. They have built a safety net so dense that failure becomes almost irrelevant. The James legacy is no longer dependent on performance alone. It is sustained by structure, branding, and control. In this new athlete-industrial era, talent may open the door and may even be optional, but the infrastructure is mandatory. And this infrastructure decides who stays inside.